Do you remember the first time you were rejected? Not just ignored, rejected, coldly, disdainfully, as if your presence were a nuisance, as if your worth had been judged and condemned, as if you, for some invisible reason, had become disposable. It is at this moment that something inside man dies, but Nietzsche would say, "What dies was not worthy of living." Most men never recover from that moment. They adapt. They try to be accepted. They begin to bend, smile more, give in, please. They think being kind will protect them from pain. They think being emotional will touch her heart, and then they lose everything. Respect, desire, freedom. They become shadows, emotional servants, slaves to an approval that never comes. Nietzsche saw this as effective nihilism, a man who places the value of himself outside of himself, who gives his soul into the hands of someone who didn't ask for it, and call it love. But here, now, this will end. In this video, you will understand why rejection is not a punishment. It is a call to transformation, why her no could be your rebirth, and how Nietzsche destroys, piece by piece, the sentimental illusion that keeps so many men in chains. If you are ready, it's time to break up. Every man carries a wound, but few know where it is, and even fewer have the courage to touch it. The wound of rejection is not just an episode, it's a mirror. It is the moment when a man realizes that he is not loved as he is, but only as long as it serves, pleases, entertains, or satisfies an expectation that was never his. That's where the ghost is born. The specter of man enough. The idea that you need to deserve her gaze, her attention, her body, her soul. Nietzsche would call this slave morality, when man exchanges his raw power for acceptance, when you disconnect from your own center to be digested by the will of another. This is where most people get lost. They begin to ask, what did I do wrong? What did she see in someone else that she didn't see in me? How can I become the kind of man she wants? Questions that seem humble. But these are disguised humiliations, because every man who tries to mold himself to be chosen has already been rejected internally. He has already abandoned himself. And the worst, she feels it. She feels despair. She feels the emotional hunger that emanates from every gesture, every message, every attempt to please. And what does she do? She puts, not because it's cruel, but because feminine nature respects the abyss. She bows to the force. She tests to find the rock. And when you find clay, you step on it. It is in this cycle that many live, begging for crumbs, calling love what is submission, calling connection what dependence is. But Nietzsche would say, this pain is sacred, because it shows where you have been conditioned, where you were domesticated. Where did you learn to cancel yourself out to be acceptable? That wound is the door, but only those who decide to stop running can enter. You can keep blaming her, or you can do what few others do, assuming that the problem was not her no. It was your yes to everything that weakened you. This is the root. And if you have the courage to face this origin, to dig deep into this wound, you will discover what Nietzsche talked about so much. Pain is necessary, because it is what separates the common man from the man who awakens. If this is making sense, continue. Have you heard this? If she truly loves you, she will love you the way you are. It looks beautiful. It seems liberating. But it's a lie. It is the most dangerous lie a man can believe, because it hides a trap. If you are not loved, the problem is you. You are insufficient, incomplete, inappropriate. You weren't good enough to awaken her unconditional love. But Nietzsche already said, every high morality hides a low instinct. And this talk of love without conditions hides control, because as long as you believe that true love is effortless, you surrender. You let your guard down, you take off the armor, and expects to be accepted, naked, vulnerable, open. But no one respects the naked man. No one admires those who give themselves up for nothing, because what is easy loses its value, and she feels it. She may even say that she wants a sensitive, open, emotional man, but deep down, she tests to see if you break. She teases to feel if you fall apart. She watches to find out if you're the kind of man who needs to be loved, or the kind of man who doesn't need anyone. Because true respect is not born from affection, born from the limit. And Nietzsche knew this. He said, love is the state in which man sees things as they are not. In other words, love blinds, but lucidity frees. And here's the blunt truth. Unconditional love is a myth sold to tame. While you wait to be loved for who you are, she is watching who you become when you are not. This is when the game begins. Do you ask for attention? Do you charge attendance? Do you threaten to leave? Or do you just watch in silence and remain in one piece? That's when she understands who she's dealing with. Men who drown in feelings are easy to manipulate because they are afraid of losing. They are afraid of being alone. They are afraid of not being loved. Nietzsche would call this weakness disguised as virtue, the man who prides himself on his sensitivity but lives hostage to female validation. What to do? Tear up this fantasy. Understand that love is not a promise. It's not a contract. It is not proof of value. Love is a silent war, a dance of forces, where only those who do not need to remain. Do you want to be loved? Be dangerous, be unpredictable, be complete in yourself, because whoever depends on unconditional love will never be free. And if it's hurting, it's a sign that it's working. You're waking up. In the next chapter, we will enter the invisible game, the silent manipulation that happens when you think everything is fine. You think the problem is in the scream, in explicit rejection, in brutal betrayal. But no, the real game is not in the confrontation, it's calm. That's when she smiles, when she says it's okay, when she pretends to admire you, but inside, something has already died. This is the invisible game, subtle manipulation, war without weapons. Nietzsche said that everything that is profound loves the mask. And this type of relationship is a theater of masks. She uses affection as currency, silence as punishment. Touch as a control tool, and you don't even notice. You think you are gaining ground, but it is being conditioned. Every time she rewards you for being good, sensitive, understanding, she trains you like a dog that learns when to sit, shut up, and obey. There is no screaming, there are no orders, there is just absence. She disappears. It cools down. She doesn't respond. She waits, and you run after it, because the man who fears loss has already lost. Nietzsche did not believe in pure intentions. He saw life as a clash of wills, and whoever does not impose his will be dominated by the others. Here's the cruelest detail. She tests without knowing she is testing. It's instinctive, it's biological, it's psychological. She needs to know if you break, if you panic about distancing, if you change your behavior just to get her back, if you start to diminish yourself, afraid of her silence. This is the invisible game. She will never say, "I'm manipulating you." She just watches. Your every reaction reveals the type of man you are, and the kind of man you are decides how she feels about you. You can be the man who begs, the one who sends long texts trying to explain, the one who apologizes for feeling too much, what bends just to keep the peace. Or you could be the man who disappears too. That doesn't come into the game, that you don't need her approval to remain in one piece. This is the breaking point. Nietzsche saw freedom as something that can be conquered, and achieving freedom within a relationship requires blood. It requires internal conflict. It requires killing the servant within you, because as long as you live in fear of losing her, will continue to be shaped by it. The invisible game only ends when you refuse to play. And when that happens, something changes in her. She feels like she no longer has control. She feels like you're out of reach. And what was contempt turned into fascination, because power changes hands when desire changes direction. You spent your life saying yes, yes to what wore you down, yes to what made no sense, yes to avoid conflict, rejection, abandonment. But one day you say no, not shouted, not explained, not dramatic, just a firm, calm, absolute no. And the world changes. Nietzsche would say, it is at this moment that the will to power manifests itself, not in dominance over the other, but in control over yourself. Because saying no is cutting, it's delimiting. It marks the end of the old man, the man who begged, who gave in, who negotiated his value. And that's what's scary, not the negative. But what does it reveal? She expected resistance, but not indifference. She expected drama, but not silence. She expected you to retreat in fear, but you just walked away. She realizes she has lost control. And at that moment, something collapses inside her. Not because you punished her, but because you showed that you can live without it. And what Nietzsche teaches us is brutal. Those who don't need it attract. Those who don't want it fascinate. Whoever doesn't bow dominates. This no is an abyss. Because the man who rejects breaks the game. It creates a vacuum. He returns the woman to her own emptiness, and she will have to face the reflection of her own strategy, coldness, manipulation, contempt. But now, coming from someone she didn't expect, she will test again. It will soften your voice. It will offer crumbs. It will try to pull you back into the script. And if you give in, everything starts over again. You return to the role of emotional servant, as a passive recipient of her desire. But if you say no, she changes, because respect is not born from flowers. It is born of borders. It is born from what you cannot tolerate. Then you refuse. What are you willing to lose? To not lose yourself. Nietzsche saw this as the true creation of value. You are only worth what you are willing to defend with your own isolation. And most men don't want to be alone. So they sell their soul for company, for affection, out of a false sense of security. But the man who says no becomes a threat, because he doesn't belong to anyone. It doesn't need to be accepted. He doesn't beg for affection. He is enough, and that's exactly what transforms the game. The woman who once rejected you now feels like she was rejected, not because you hurt her, but because you just didn't give in. If this confronts you, it's because you've already felt this moment, or because you are about to experience it. You were trained to be present, pay attention, available, effective. He believed that love is care, that presence is proof of value, that the more you donate, the more you will be loved. But the truth is brutal. She doesn't respect presence. She respects absence. She respects the abyss. Nietzsche said, depth is a quality that frightens the shallow. And that's exactly what happens. The deep man, the one who remains silent when he should shout, the one who observes when everyone reacts, the one who disappears when everyone explains themselves, is feared because it escapes predictable logic. It stops being an emotional tool. It stops being something that can be manipulated by subtle praise or punishment. He becomes a mystery. And mystery is what keeps desire alive. You think that being understandable, transparent, and nice will create a bond, but it only creates predictability, and the predictable doesn't excite. Don't challenge, don't score. She needs to look at you and feel like she doesn't know everything, that you are not hers, that you can disappear at any time, not for the game, but for the essence. She needs to feel the gulf between who you are and what she can achieve. Nietzsche would call this integrity of spirit, a man who has an internal structure that is too solid to lose himself in other people's needs. A man who can love, but it doesn't need to, because he is not distracted by promises. He doesn't run after reconciliation. He is not moved by tears that come after manipulation. He sees everything, but he doesn't react, and that destabilizes her. She feels like you're there, but on another level, that you listen, but don't submit, that you want, but don't give in to. This is the abyss, the distance between what she can control and what she can only admire. And this is where everything turns around. The man who was despised for showing off too much. Now he is desired because he shows himself to be less, not because he plays, but because it exists on another frequency. Nietzsche would call this the overcoming of the all-too-human, the man who transcends the impulse to be loved and choose to be real. Cold? No. Just conscious, and that awareness, that impassivity, is what attracts her. Because she knows, even if unconsciously, this man cannot be bought. You cannot be seduced with promises. It cannot be poisoned by emotional blackmail. She looks at him and sees the abyss. And faced with the abyss, there are only two options: back away in fear, or play with desire. If you are ready for this, in the next chapter we will explore the culmination of the turnaround. To reject is to dominate. You were taught to conquer, running after, to insist, thinking that love is a war that can be won with persistence, with flowers, with statements, with proof. But Nietzsche laughed at that. For him, power was never about conquering. The real power is in rejecting. Does it seem absurd? It's because you still see love as salvation, as a remedy for your loneliness, like something that completes you. But from the moment you refuse, you stop being needy, and it turns into a fountain. You stop asking, and it starts to impose, not with violence, but with absence, with silence, with the coldness of someone who has already died inside and came back different. Nietzsche said, "Everything that needs to be justified is already sick." And your desperate desire to be accepted, loved, validated is illness. It's a sign that you've lost your bearings. The man who dominates is the man who can say no to everything that weakens him, including pleasure, including love, including women, mainly to women, because when you reject, you mark territory. You declare that you are not for sale, who does not bow before beauty, nor before lack, nor before sex. And that is a terror for those who try to control you. She may have the perfect face, the ideal body, the right words, but you see beyond. You see manipulation disguised as affection, blackmail hidden in affection, control diluted in touch, and you say no, not because he doesn't feel it, but because he feels too much and still doesn't give in. That is true strength, not the strength of someone who has never loved, but that of those who loved and survived, that of someone who was torn apart inside and now knows it's not worth losing yourself for anyone. Nietzsche saw this as the ultimate affirmation of the will, the point at which man becomes his own God. It doesn't need redemption. You don't need forgiveness. It doesn't need to be welcomed. He is enough. He stands up. And when he looks at her, it's not with desire, it's with judgment. Are you worthy of what I can offer? Can you bear the weight of my truth? Are you going to add or are you going to suck? And if the answer is no, he rejects it, and at that exact moment, it dominates. Because rejecting is not despising, it's showing that you have a choice. It's reversing the axis of the game. It's declaring that you are not there to be chosen, you are the one who chooses. She feels it. And even without understanding, he leans in. The man who rejects calmly, coldly, with conscience, it's the only one she can't handle. He's the only one she truly respects. If you've made it this far, you're ready for the last step. Become unattainable. There comes a time when a man no longer feels the need to win the game because he realizes that the game is a prison, and escaping from prison is not escaping. It's disappearing. It's becoming invisible to the chains that previously held you back. This is what it means to be unattainable. You are no longer touched by compliments, no longer shaken by rejection, does not respond to provocations. It is not altered by presence, nor by absence. Nietzsche would say, return to who you are. But this is only possible when you tear up all the fake identities. The romantic, the good one, the needy, the emotional. You kill these characters. And then, for the first time, you appear cold, yes, distant, yes, but whole, because now you understand. Every misdirected emotion is weakness. Every unchosen attachment is prison. Every fear of losing is a confession that you have already lost yourself. The woman who used to manipulate you now watches you with strangeness. She doesn't understand what has changed. You still talk little, still look steadily. It's still there, but it isn't. Because you don't offer yourself anymore. You don't explain yourself. You don't surrender. She looks for you and doesn't find you. He tries to access you and hits a wall, tests you and gets no reaction. And it is in this absolute silence that respect is reborn. Nietzsche saw true power as that which does not need to assert itself. He just is. And the unattainable man is this. A presence that is not imposed but felt. Strength that is not shown but is perceived. Authority that is not declared but recognized. This man is not loved by everyone. He is feared by many, admired by few, and understood by almost no one. Because he doesn't seek acceptance, he does not negotiate his principles. He doesn't allow pain to change him. He turns it into a sword. He's the kind of man who doesn't beg, which doesn't convince, that doesn't bend. And because of that, he is free. You can become that man, but he will need to die first. Dying to your emotional addictions, for your emotional childishness. For the illusion that love saves. Nietzsche would call this eternal recurrence, dying to yourself, to be reborn to yourself. You will no longer be the same. She will know. Everyone will know, because you will no longer be someone who needs love. You will be someone who is raw self-love, unbreakable, indomitable, unattainable. If you made it this far, it's because something inside you has already started to change. Maybe you don't know how to name it. Maybe it still hurts. But the truth is simple. You are not the same anymore. You no longer look at her hungry. You no longer want approval. You no longer feel like you need to prove your worth. Because now you know you have always been valuable. But it was buried beneath fear, buried by the sweet lies of conditioned affection, plagued by the illusion of the good man. And when Nietzsche talks about becoming who you are, he doesn't talk about self-help. He talks about internal struggle, of destruction, of rebirth. You were destroyed inside, and that was the best thing that could have happened to you, because now you reject it, now you choose, now you exist, above need, and she feels it. He doesn't understand, but he feels it. She sees his eyes and finds no pleading. She touches your skin and finds no tension. She provokes you and finds no despair. She realizes you're the kind of man who could have her, but it doesn't need to. And that is devastating. You have become an enigma, an abyss, a dark reflection of what she cannot control. And believe me, she respects this more than any declaration of love. You don't need to explain yourself. Don't even justify yourself. Its very presence is already an affirmation. I refuse to be controlled. And if this phrase resonated within you, if you touched something that was dormant, So write in the comments now, I refuse to be controlled. Write this down as a seal. How I scream, like liberation. And don't stop here. Reconstruction has begun, but there's still more. The next video is essential. Click now and continue the journey towards the man no one else can manipulate.